Rachel Grace Holmes is an executive leadership and communication coach and former master teaching artist who works with K through 12 schools, higher education, and global organizations. A former NASA inclusion specialist, she designs social-emotional, neurodiversity affirming learning experiences that help young people build confidence, connection, and belonging through authentic self-expression. Dr. Rachel Lofton is a licensed clinical psychologist and chief clinical officer at Prosper Health, where she leads neurodiversity affirming autism services for adolescents and adults nationwide. A Yale and Northwestern adjunct faculty member, her work centers on diagnosis, identity development, and building supportive peer communities across the lifespan. Dr. Megan Salee is a licensed psychologist and assistant professor at Beacon College, specializing in child, adolescent, and emerging adult mental health. With deep expertise in peer relationships, social development, ADHD, and aggression, she helps students translate self-understanding into healthier friendships and campus communities. And we're going to begin our conversation with Rachel Grace. For parents of young children, what are some simple ways to spot interests like arts, animals, or games that can naturally help neurodivergent children connect with one another?
Well, first off, to observe your child, let them play. I always say, let them play. So you want to take a step back and set up a safe, low focus, low pressure environment that is interest driven, passion driven. And over time, you'll see consistency. Your child will pick up their favorite toy. You'll learn how long they want to play with the toy, how they want to play with the toy. You can even glean what time of day they want to play with the toy. So that's some individual play. Moving into connection, now we're going to do parallel play. So within the arts, that might look like setting up sensory stations. For example, a station with different textures, Play-Doh, sandpaper, velvet, different sounds, maybe a stream trickling or popcorn being popped, different smells, lavender, just a lot of different ways for children to interact with the world that, again, is low focus. And they might start to interact with each other. You can also have a child do shapes with their bodies in circles with other children. Again, they don't have to interact each other. You never want to force connection in that way. You want them to feel comfortable enough in their passion, and then it'll spill over organically. With nature, I love nature walks, and that's for all children. That's for everyone, in fact. Nature walks and scavenger hunts, try to find a rock, stones, leaves, trees, perhaps listen for bird song. And at the end of that nature walk, parents can ignite reflection, ask questions. What did you see? How did you feel about what you saw? What did you learn? Show me with your body your favorite animal. And then you can actually watch children interact with each other. Perhaps you learn a way that your child represents that they agree with someone and that they're having fun. You're going to start to build those qualitative metrics of what fun looks like, whether it's bright eyes, a certain sound, a favorite stim, hand flapping. These are all qualitative metrics to know that your child is engaging. In terms of games, I'm a big advocate of turn-based games. They're structured. Think of card games, Uno, Chutes and Ladders, Candyland. Think of card games like, Uno. And moving forward, you can also have a lot of structure in building blocks, Legos. Again, these are all turn-based. And you want to use visual cue cards to tell your child, now it's your turn, or now it's my turn. And in all of these games and activities, you're inherently teaching your child how to be themselves and how to actually learn patience and structure and why rules are there. So again, you really want to use those visual cues. So, to really observe individual play is the first thing, and then really push for parallel play, low focus, no need for your child to directly interact with another child.
So, Dr. Lofton, what makes a classroom, club, or activity feel welcoming to neurodivergent kids, and what red flags should suggest to parents that this may or may not be the best fit for them?
I would start with flexibility and accommodation. At any age, what matters most is an environment that respects what a person needs in order to feel comfortable and engage. One person is going to need to move around or stand in order to stay present and listen, while another person is going to benefit from clear structure and knowing when breaks will happen and knowing when an activity will end. And in a welcoming setting, these needs are all treated as support needs and not behavior problem or somebody being difficult. I'd also pay really close attention to how the leaders in the room handle correction or redirection. In a supportive setting, redirection's calm and natural and explanatory. So you might hear something like, let's try this instead, because what you're doing right now might get you hurt, rather than just don't do that, don't do that. The focus is on guidance and understanding rather than just punishment because it's instructive and not looking to demean the kid. Some red flags really might include very rigid rules without room for individual needs, a heavy focus on compliance over engagement, or frequent correction without that kind of explanation I talked about. If a child or adult consistently appears stressed or shut down or singled out, that's a really clear indicator that the setting just isn't affirming for them.
All right, thank you. So, Dr. Salih, how can parents discern between an independent, happy child who's fine with being on their own and a child who really wants to have friends but struggles to make them?
So, social connection is a fundamental human need. So, I would say, we certainly want to be raising children who are self reliant, right? They can make decisions. Maybe they can do their own laundry. They can learn how to regulate their emotions. But being connected socially is still a really important part of their development. So, people vary in how much socializing they want to do, but certainly having some social connection is really important. So I would say if they're happy doing things independently, that's wonderful. And there's still room to make sure that they are making and fostering social connections.
All right, thank you. So, Rachel Grace, when kids find communities that they feel safe, how does that impact them later in life in shaping their confidence and their leadership?
I love this question. Shout out to Leverage Ed National Cohort of Educators, because I just served on a panel with this very topic. So when we help our children find safe harbors, they inherently switch their internal narrative to understanding that they might be different and they're capable. They're not a broken person who needs to be fixed. And this translates beautifully and seamlessly to leadership roles. For example, you might have a lead engineer who is hyper-focused on their work. What does that mean? That means you have an expert in your company who knows every in and out of their subject. And that is a wonderful thing to have. In leadership, you'll also find that these children who found safe spaces turn into leaders who inherently, by default, provide their own safe spaces for their teams, because this is what they're used to. And I love this facet of it because I truly believe that when you are able to make a safe harbor for your most vulnerable population, you inherently make it safe for everyone. Within leadership as well, this population often tends to not play with social hierarchy. They don't really care as much about who has which title. They really are about the work and the vision. And because of pattern recognition, oftentimes these turn into leaders who can spot challenges down the road way ahead of time, which gives the entire team the ability to see things ahead of time and really collaborate in a new way. So I really think finding a safe harbor for anyone in childhood, of course, really validates, and which leads to a high level of confidence and the feeling of not having to expend your energy in how to align with a world. Rather, it flips into how to contribute to the world.
All right. So, Dr. Lofton, what does healthy parental support look like in the realm of friendships without parents stepping in over the line and taking over?
Yeah, it really comes down to supporting without stepping in too much. It's so natural for caregivers to want to jump in, especially when an interaction feels awkward or when their child seems to be struggling socially. But stepping in to prompt or correct mid interaction can send the unintended message that the child isn't capable of handling it independently. And kids can really internalize that. Often, the most helpful support around the interaction is better than inside of it. And that might look like helping your child find environments that are better fits, making sure supports are in place in the setting, or talking things through or reviewing a social story in advance to make sure your child is more comfortable because they know what to expect once they get into the setting. Supporting also means respecting their social needs. Some people want a lot of connection, others want little, and both are valid. part of the support you can offer is recognizing that your child may define friendships differently than you would, and then allow their definition and not yours to guide the kinds of relationships that are meaningful for them. And then underneath all of this, the important piece is really acceptance. So communicating in words and actions, you are okay as you are, because that foundation makes it much easier for young people to build relationships in a way that actually works for them.
All right, thank you. So, Dr. Salih, when a neurodivergent child experiences repeated rejections or misunderstandings, how does that impact their confidence and what helps to rebuild it?
Yeah, so we know that repeated peer rejection impacts a number of things: anxiety, loneliness, and certainly self-confidence. And, the thing about self-confidence is when we feel confident, we're more likely to try new things. We're more likely to stick with things that are difficult. And so we don't want our children to lose that grit and determination. And we certainly don't want them to be fearful of trying new things and sticking with things. So it is really important, if that self-confidence takes a hit, that we're finding ways to rebuild that. And if we're talking socially here, we can look for easier ways for them to experience social settings that are not very high stakes. So that might be structured activities, maybe something like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, that may help facilitate some of those relationships, and they're doing activities together and they're not having to navigate that completely on their own. Sports as well, if they have an interest in that. Certainly getting them involved in social skills groups, which can not only help them practice the social skills, but see that there's other kids like them. And that can bring a real comfort and a real boost to self-confidence. And then certainly reinforcing the efforts that they're making, right? We're going to celebrate more than we're going to criticize, for sure, and celebrating those small wins. So if someone talked to them and they smiled at them, we're going to say, oh, I'm so proud of you, your engagement with this person, versus, why didn't you say hello, right? We're going to focus on the things they're doing well and encourage that and help them feel successful in those things. And it will build. Where they start is not going to be where they finish if we continue to encourage their bravery and those steps that they're taking in these social situations.
All right. So, Rachel Grace, as children move through middle school, high school, and into college, how can parents help them develop communication skills that will help them better be able to find people who get them?
This is an important question because as your child matriculates into different grades and different schools and finally ends up in higher education, you kind of go from, early childhood where you're arranging play dates, for example, to now you're coaching your child on self-advocacy. So in terms of being able to find your own tribe, you want to help your child kind of have a self-identity sheet, have them know how to advocate for their needs and how to walk into a room and say, hey, I like this. And if you see this, this means this, and that's just to say, hey, for example, if I'm not looking at you, that doesn't mean I'm not, interested. In terms of higher education, it is so important that your child has those self-advocacy skills and also uses the resources that are provided, the Office of Disability Support, using that student advisor, telling your professors, hey, I might need consistent extra time with office hours. And of course, finding community with peers, it's a litmus test for everyone, but you're going to want to find even an online community for digital art, or maybe you're walking into a classroom for folks who are really interested in theater tech or robotics, right? A lot of times we go to coding, things that are now, adults are racing to learn into the future. It's interesting to look back and say, oh, wow, this population has always been doing that. Maybe you go to college and find someone who also did Dungeons and Dragons. I did, So it's really a question of transferring the mindset to, once again, advising your child on how to fit in and instead coaching them on how to find where they fit in with their own individual play and also parallel work. You're going to want a body double in the library, just as we do in the workplace. So there are a lot of things that translate to everyone and will make it a little bit smoother for your child to align and fit into an environment that will help them be more rigorous and have that resilience that we've been talking about throughout education and leading into leadership roles.
All right. So, Dr. Lofton, what would you say to parents who are concerned that their teen or young adult hasn't yet found this type of connection? They haven't found their safe haven or a tribe.
First, I'd validate that they're focusing on something really important. That sense of belonging and community is essential for mental health for all of us at any age. I'd encourage caregivers to be open in how they think about connection. So, for many people, autistic or not, relationships form more naturally around shared interests through unstructured socializing. So, instead of wondering, do they have enough friends? Are they lonely? It can be more helpful to think, were they able to engage in something they enjoy and spend time with other people doing that? This might be game nights, coding groups, as were already mentioned, like fandom communities. There's lots of different ways that structured social interaction can happen. But structured activities like these can really reduce the pressure to be social because there's a clear shared focus and the expectations are usually more overt. It's also worth remembering that your child may define friendship differently than you would. Who they consider their people or their best friend or what closeness looks like, it might not match the model that you have in your head, and that is okay. I always encourage caregivers to pay attention to where their child is most at ease, also, because where they're able to be themselves and where they're able to relax, those are the spaces that are often the most beneficial for them. Often that even means being around other neurodivergent people where the communication styles may be more aligned with their own or where there's less pressure to perform socially.
All right. So, Dr. Salee, from your experience, what kinds of college environments are best suited to helping neurodivergent students develop genuine friendships?
Yeah, I think college campuses where there is a lot of support at different levels for people who, from people, excuse me, who understand and appreciate neurodivergence. Looking for campuses where you can see advertised all kinds of different clubs of all kinds of different interests are available, where students have the ability to start their own clubs and get support from the college and university so they can find their interests and their people. Here at Beacon, faculty, administration are involved in being at various events. They have, so that's one level of support, and another integral level of support. Here we have learning specialists. And so those are folks who meet very regularly with the students and can encourage them to try out these various events and clubs. And not just that clubs are available, but activities are available that are low stakes that students can attend as well, that don't take a major commitment, but maybe happen every now and then and don't require specific skills. So things like ice cream socials. These are things to be looking for because it allows for a lot of different interests. It allows for a lot of different levels of socializing. I can just drop in and try this out, or I can commit to being with this group weekly or monthly for our meetings, whatever it might be. So certainly places that are open to student feedback and student interest as they're building these different avenues to socialize.
All right, thank you. So, Rachel Grace, how can parents model acceptance and curiosity so that their children learn that they don't have to change who they are simply to belong?
So it goes back to that early childhood world where you're taking a step back and witnessing what fun looks like. What are their curiosities and how can you match that? And you're allowed to verbalize that. You're allowed to say, wow, I see that piques your interest. And I understand why that's fascinating, right? That interests me as well. I think in terms of building confidence so that your child feels like they fit in, for example, support the fact that when they're having fun, they might stim. Never see that as something negative. That's going to reinforce that inner narrative of confidence that we've been talking about. I think it's also important for parents to realize that they have needs too. This is not just a one-way street. So for example, it can be really helpful as a parent to say, hey, you know what? I'm overstimulated right now. This is a noisy place. I need to put on my headphones and tune out for a bit. There's no reason why these worlds cannot come together. And I think the more curious we are, the more what and how questions we ask our children, and we understand how they communicate and how they show their needs, and obviously see when they don't enjoy something, I think it's easier to start to advocate and support and make it a little bit of a seamless transition. So I think it's really interesting to, for example, ask I wonder questions. I wonder if that's something we do in the classroom all the time. And you just open this huge world that everyone can belong in. So that child will not feel as if they don't belong. And they in turn can return that gift when they're doing parallel play, for example. And this translates to every level of life, because we have to remember adults who, for example, have autism were once children who have autism. So we want to look at a way that we can really provide structure, predictability, and safe harbors for our children, so that it really kind of hardwires them in a way to feel accepted and know the difference between when they're not being accepted. So it really is a group effort. And again, parents, you are completely allowed to make note cards and hand it to your caregivers and say, hey, this is what makes my child feel really comfortable. And hey, if this happens, this means they're not being comfortable, and this is what works for me or what doesn't work for me. So basically, it's an ongoing conversation. And I always say, never underestimate the transformative power of play and curiosity, and don't forget to laugh throughout.
All right, thank you. So, Dr. Lofton, in your work with adults, how does early or late experiences with belonging impact their long-term mental health?
Well, belonging is a fundamental human need, but the way that shows up can look different across people. Many neurodivergent adults recall early experiences of feeling misunderstood, of being corrected frequently, of having difficulty finding environments where they could be their authentic selves. And research shows us that repeated experiences of misunderstanding or exclusion can start to shape how someone sees themselves over time and what they expect from other people. And these patterns can contribute to anxiety, burnout, and withdrawal. For some autistic people from marginalized backgrounds, the effort required is just not only about masking neurodivergent traits, but also navigating code switching or meeting additional cultural expectations. And then this can create sort of a layered pressure to get it right. And the impact of not feeling that sense of belonging can really build over time. There's a structural piece to this too. Many people have access to more supportive environments when they're young through school-based services. And then they lose those built-in opportunities for belonging in adulthood. And this can lead to fewer opportunities later for different, more positive experiences that could have been corrective for something negative that happened in childhood. This is why I place a real emphasis on positive, supportive community for adults at Prosper Health. The encouraging part of all of this is that patterns aren't fixed. When people find environments that are a better fit, where they can be authentic and where correction is not constant, those experiences of belonging can be really powerful, even if they happen much later in life. So for families, one of the most important things to keep in mind is that if you help create opportunities for positive experiences of belonging early, that means finding environments where your child feels accepted and not just managed. Those experiences tend to stay with people and shape what they believe is possible in future relationships.
So, Dr. Salih, are there common adult mistakes, either at home or at school, that unintentionally make social struggles even more difficult for neurodivergent kids?
Yes, and I think this can be really difficult for adults to change this behavior, but it is incredibly powerful if they can. One of the biggest things I see is adults, and this has been mentioned here today, adults jump in to what they think is, saving the child in a social situation, maybe jumping in to answer a question that's taking them a while to respond to, or and I think for the most part are doing that to be helpful. But the message that then the child experiences is, I'm not capable of doing this, or I'm not doing a good job, or I'm not good enough at this. And so then they're going to be less and less motivated and interested in trying to engage in those social interactions. So I think for, something adults can do would be to slow down and be patient and really give the child an opportunity to participate socially, especially with our neurodivergent population. A number of things could be going on. So it might be taking them a little bit longer to comprehend what the question was that was asked of them or what the topic is that's being discussed. It might be taking them a little bit more time to retrieve the information from their brain that they want to share, or to formulate and organize it and how they want to say it. And so just taking a little bit extra time for them to be able to participate in their own way, and then being able to celebrate that they did participate and acknowledge them as a important contributor to the conversation, and appreciating that they're offering their perspective or what they have to say, can be very, very helpful. It's hard to be patient. It's hard to kind of wait it out, but that's giving them practice. And as time goes on and they get more and more comfortable, some of that waiting may turn into less time, and everybody may have more comfortable experience in those social settings. But we've got to give them the opportunities to do it, to try it, to practice it. You could practice outside of social settings with them on their own. They can have things that they're prepared to say, and as time goes on, they can add to that repertoire. But certainly when they do try and when they do offer, giving them the time and space, and then appreciating what they contribute, because they do have really wonderful, meaningful things to contribute.
All right, well, that will be our final word. Rachel Grace Holmes, Dr. Rachel Lofton, and Dr. Megan Salee. Thanks for the knowledge.